On January 21st, 2017, more women told Donald Trump they wouldn't fuck him if he was the last person on Earth than any man in human history.
And in my mother's womb was fashioned to be flesh in the time of 10 months, being compacted in blood of the seed of man.
That's right.
Of the seed of man.
The word seed is sperm, and sperm comes through having sex.
It's shut out of your father's rod.
Right.
Put it in layman terms, in his penis.
That's right.
That means a man put his penis in a woman and bust off on her.
Then the angel said to him, "Take out the entrails of this fish, and lay up his heart and his gall and his liver for thee. For these are necessary for useful medicines."
The rest of the chapters of the Book of Esther,
Go ahead.
which are found neither in the Hebrew nor in the Chaldee.
Greetings, fellow worker slaves, podcasting at 128 kilobits from the Fortress of Squalitude. This is the Atheist in the Trailer Park podcast. I'm your host, Tucker. Professor Fuzznuts is in my face demanding attention. Yes, it's a podcast hosted by a guy and his cat. Get over it. This is, as you can no doubt tell by the opening music, a Biblical Apocrypha episode. Next episode will be a news episode, and hopefully America will be back with us. And a bit of an update on friend of the show, Heretic Woman's condition. I talked with her via Messenger earlier this week. She is back home after spending a couple of days in the ICU. She's tired, still has her chest infection, but is on the mend and is spending her time napping and watching Our Gang Little Rascals comedies on YouTube. So, for those of you who are wondering what her condition was, that's where it is, and I'm sure I speak for everybody when I say we're all glad that she's home and doing better. Although, she posted a photo on her Facebook page of her arm after having blood draws, and her arm is just this mass of bruises. Not sure if she had bad phlebotomists or if she's one of those unfortunate people who have veins that are really hard to find. I'm lucky in that my veins just pop out very easily. Okay, and it is just going to be me and Fuzznuts this week. I didn't bother trying to find anyone to guest on the show as I was a bit busier than usual, and I figured that with all the things going on with the protests surrounding the inauguration, it'd be difficult to get someone else. I wasn't able to go to the march in Nashville, but I did go to the potluck dinner the local Democratic Party had this past Thursday night. That was a fairly interesting evening. We got a rather vague update on their plans to get out more voters. It was vague because the local election commission hasn't released voter data yet, so they don't know which polling places got the highest number of Democratic votes. They need that information because they want to try and find the folks who voted for Hillary and bring them into the fold. Now, I'm sure that since basically every part of the local government is controlled by the Republicans, this has nothing to do with the fact that they haven't gotten that information 2 months after the election occurred. And while I understand that they want to reach out to those already sympathetic to Democratic policies, if we're going to shift this area politically, we need to get more than just the 18,000 people who voted for Hillary on our side. I don't know what percentage of the voters that is, but it's only about 10% of the population. I'm assuming they have plans to reach out to the larger population, but details weren't given. Hopefully this stuff will come out at future events. Most of the people at the event, and I think there were about 20 or 30, I didn't bother to count, were ones who'd also been to the Christmas party I attended. There were a few I'd not seen before, and we had a bit of an epic fail on the part of one person there. The crowd was almost entirely white. The woman who hosted the Christmas party at her house was there, and another African-American woman showed up. The second woman was a first-timer. At some point after she arrived, an elderly man walked up to her and asked if she was so-and-so, who was a local politician. The woman replied that she wasn't, and the elderly man said, "She's a black lady, too." The woman made an awkward response, disengaged herself from the conversation, and left soon afterwards. Not what we needed. The other thing that I noticed about the event was that everybody there, except for me and the couple of college students there, were middle class. 10% of the county lives in poverty, which means that they have an income of less than $12,000 a year. I make slightly more than twice that, and if you think that I don't live in poverty, then I suggest you try living on less than $30,000 a year. Poor people are the very ones that the party needs to be reaching out to, but doesn't seem to be. And if you're wondering why I'm babbling about all this and not diving into the Apocrypha, that's because the next couple of books are all really short, and I don't want to blow through them in a few minutes and then have to scramble to fill up the episode. So I'm front-loading it a bit to try and keep that from happening. Fun fact, based on Wikipedia, the additions to the Book of Esther aren't going to make a hell of a lot of sense. Apparently, when St. Jerome was translating the Bible into Latin in 390, he noticed that in the Book of Esther, certain passages were in Greek, while the bulk of the work was in Hebrew. His solution, instead of saying, this is probably bullshit, was to stick those passages at the end of the Book of Esther, and depending upon which translation of the Bible you have, they're either still there, or they've been merged back in with the rest of the book. Assuming, of course, you have a version with the Apocrypha in it. Ain't no way I'm gonna reread the Book of Esther just to have these passages interpolated back into the text. It's only 7 chapters, most of which are less than a dozen verses or so. The Book of Esther is about a Persian woman named Hadassah, but called Esther because who the fuck can say Hadassah? The Persian king, who may or may not be one of the various Xerxes who ruled the Persian Empire, wanted to show his wife off before a big banquet. His wife refused, so he gets rid of her and orders all the single women of the kingdom to come before him so he can pick a new wife. Because he's king and his dick isn't going undipped. Esther catches his eye, and she has the misfortune of becoming his wife. After she's married, her uncle informs her of a plot to exterminate all the Jews in the kingdom. Esther's solution to this is to throw a bunch of parties to which she invites the king. After getting him all liquored up, she explains to him that she's Jewish and will have to die when the plan to exterminate all the Jews is launched. This pisses the king off, so he cancels the genocide, has the leader who wanted to do it killed, along with much of his family. When Esther learns of this, she asks if the king will let the Jews kill the remaining members of the guy's family, along with 75,000 other Persians. Naturally, the king agrees, because who doesn't like a good genocide when it's your hot wife asking for it, huh? Today, the event is commemorated as the Feast of Purim in Jewish society. I wonder, do any of, I mean, because, you know, in America, this is kind of like our Thanksgiving, really. But in America, lots of us are now making jokes about how it's we killed your people and took your land day. I wonder if anybody in Jewish society is referring to Purim as, hey, you know, it's the feast of us committing genocide against you instead of you committing it against us. Or if they just kind of sweep the whole genocidal part under the rug when it comes to what they supposedly did. Of course, since nobody knows when this book was written, funny that you would think there would be accurate records among the society as to when a specific book happened, and perhaps even archaeological evidence. It's thought that if it was one of the King Xerxes, it was written 150 years after the events happened. Which would mean, yeah, it's most likely bullshit. Or you could just say, no, it's definitely bullshit because nobody knows when it was written, nobody knows who the people involved were, and there's no historical record to accurately give you this information. I don't know. But probably none of what I've just said will make anything fully clear in this, but at least it will give you some idea of what's going on. Another bit of trivia, the chopped down version of Esther in the book of in the Old Testament is the only book of the Bible where God isn't explicitly mentioned. However, as you'll see in a moment, that's not the case with the full version. So let's get to the gibberish, shall we? Then Mardukis said, God hath done these things. Mardukis is some dude who's dream interpreting for the king. For I remember a dream which I saw concerning these matters, and nothing thereof hath failed. A little fountain became a river, and there was light and the sun. How do you have one before the other? And much water. This river is Esther, whom the king married and made queen. And the 2 dragons are I and Amam. I and Aman. Amen. And the nations were those that were assembled to destroy the name of the Jews. And my nation is this Israel, which cried to God and were saved. For the Lord hath saved his people, and the Lord hath delivered us from all those evils. And God hath wrought signs and great wonders, which have not been done among the Gentiles. Therefore hath he made 2 lots, one for the people of God, and another for all the Gentiles. And these 2 lots came at the hour and time and day of judgment before God among all nations. So God remembered his people and justified his inheritance. Huh? Yeah. I remember you. You're my peeps. And I'm gonna inherit all of you. Y'all gonna be my bitches. 'Cause I gave them to myself. Therefore, those days shall be unto them in the month of Adar, the 14th and 15th day of the same month, with an assembly and joy, and with gladness before God, according to the generations forever among his people. And that is the end of the first chapter. See, I told you they were short. In the 4th year of the reign of Ptolemy and Cleopatra, that would actually put a date on this. Oh, but it doesn't, because here's why. Hang on. If that date given is to be believed, then it would have been about the year 47 BCE that this thing is happening. Not the events of the book, but what's about to be described next. In the 4th year of the reign of Ptolemy and Cleopatra, Diosteus, who said he was a priest and Levite, and Ptolemy, his son, brought this epistle of Purim, which would be Purim, which they said was the same, and that Lysimachus, the son of Ptolemy, that was in Jerusalem, had interpreted it. So, in other words, in roughly 47 BCE, this thing supposedly appeared. That's the later interpolation in the text. And we don't know how old the text was that St. Jerome was using when he made his translation. But this is clearly an effort by somebody to establish that this document had been in use for a number of years. So, to my mind, this tells me that this wouldn't have been written around 400 BCE or 300 and something BCE like is thought, but it would have been written no earlier than 47 BCE. And probably, honestly, I would put it at sometime in CE, sometime after the, supposed birth of Christ, because somebody is trying to put a date that seems, usually in these things, that people try to put dates that seem way back and remote in history. So this interpolation would be after 47 CE, so you would figure that they're probably looking at like the 1st century CE or even the 2nd century. And this wasn't translated until, Jerome didn't get his mitts on this until 390 CE. So, hell, his copy could have been, if, let's say he had the oldest known copy at the time and it was 50 years old. So this is all really sketchy. Now back to the bullshit. In the second year of the reign of Xerxes the Great, in the first day of the month of Nisan, Mardochus, son of Jarius, the son of Semai, the son of Sisai, of the tribe of Benjamin, had a dream. Oh, goody, more dream interpretation stuff. Who was a Jew and dwelt in the city of Susa, a great man, being a servitor in the king's court. He was also one of the captives which Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, carried from Jerusalem with Jeconias, king of Judea, and this was his dream. Wow. Took you a long way to get there. Behold, a noise of a tumult with thunder and earthquakes and uproar in the land. And behold, 2 great dragons came forth ready to fight. And their cry was great. And at their cry all nations were prepared to battle, that they might fight against the righteous people. Really? Including the folks in North and South America who had no clue about the other side of the world, and the other side of the world had no clue about them? And lo, a day of darkness and obscurity, tribulation and anguish, affliction and great uproar upon earth. And the whole righteous nation was troubled, fearing their own evils, and were ready to perish. Then they cried unto God, and upon their cry, as it were from a little fountain, was made a great flood, even much water. The light and the sun rose up, and the lowly were exalted, and devoured the glorious. Cannibalism. Now when Mardochus, who had seen this dream, and what God had determined to do, was awake, he bare this dream in mind, and until night by all means was desirous to know it. I don't know. And now chapter 3. And Mardochus took his rest in the court with Gabbatha and Thara, the 2 eunuchs of the king and keepers of the palace. And he heard their devices and searched out their purposes, and learned that they were about to lay hands upon Xerxes the king. And so he certified the king of them. And the king examined the 2 eunuchs, and after they had confessed it, they were strangled. Now that was a Roman method of execution reserved for Roman citizens. Don't know about the Persians. Of course, strangled actually had a variety of different meanings at this point in time. It could mean beheading. And the king made a record of these things, and Mardochus also wrote thereof. So the king commanded Mardochus to serve in the court, and for this he rewarded him. Howbeit Aman, the son of Amadathias the Agite, I don't know, who was in great honor with the king, sought to molest Mardochus and his people because of the 2 eunuchs of the king. Kinky. And that is the end of number 3. See, we're almost halfway through this thing. The copy of the letters was this. The great King Xerxes writeth these things to the princes and governors that are under him from India unto Ethiopia, and in 120 and in 107 and 20 provinces. Why can't you assholes just write 127 provinces? After that I became lord over many nations and had dominion over the whole world. No, you didn't. Not lifted up with presumption of my authority. Really? I'm king of the world, but I'm not the least bit presumptuous, but carrying myself always with equity and mildness. Bigly, right? I proposed to settle my subjects continually in a quiet life. No, I purposed to settle my subjects continually in a quiet life, in making my kingdom peaceable and open for passage to the utmost coasts, to renew peace, which is desired of all men. Thank you for playing. Now when I asked my counselors how this might be brought to pass, a man that excelled in wisdom among us, and was approved for his constant good will and steadfast fidelity, and had the honor of the second place in the kingdom. Notice that's ahead of the queen. Declared unto us that in all nations throughout the world there was scattered a certain malicious people, that had laws contrary to all nations, and continually despised the commandments of kings, so as the uniting of our kingdoms, honorably intended by us, cannot go forward. Uppity little bastards. Seeing, then, we understand that this people alone is continually in opposition unto all men, differing in the strange manner of their laws, and evil affected to our state, working all the mischief they can that our kingdom may not be firmly established. Therefore have we commanded that all they that are signified in writing unto you by Ammon, who is ordained over the affairs and is next to us, shall all, with their wives and children, be utterly destroyed by the sword of their enemies, without all mercy and pity, the 40th day of the 12th month Adar of this present year. That they, who of old and now also are malicious, may in one day with violence go into the grave, and so ever hereafter cause our affairs to be well settled and without trouble. Then Mardukos thought upon all the works of the Lord, and made his prayer unto him, saying, O Lord, Lord, the King Almighty, for the whole world is in thy power, except for those parts of the world we don't know anything about. And if thou hast appointed to save Israel, there is no man that can gainsay thee. Huh? Oh, I get it. Dude's praying to God. For thou hast made heaven and earth, and all the wondrous things under the heaven. Thou art Lord of all things, and there is no man that can resist thee, which art the Lord. Thou knowest all things, and thou knowest, Lord, that it was neither in contempt nor pride, nor for any desire of glory, that I did not bow down to proud Ammon. And you also know that the guy's gonna kill everybody, so really, why am I having to beg you to spare our lives? Huh? If you love us so much, why are you making us beg, bitch? Huh? Why are you making me beg? For I could have been content with the good will for the salvation of Israel to kiss the soles of his feet. God damn, what is it with people with foot fetishes and these things? But I did this that I might not prefer the glory of man above the glory of God. Neither will I worship any but thee, O God, neither will I do it in pride. And now, O Lord God and King, spare thy people, for their eyes are upon us to bring us to naught. Yea, they desire to destroy the inheritance that hath been thine from the beginning. Yeah, they're gonna kill your bitches, man. You're gonna let them kill your bitches, God? Despise not the portion. I know we small bitches, but they're gonna kill us, which thou hast delivered out of Egypt for thine own self. It's just amazing. Okay, God, so you want us to be your bitches, so you pulled us out of Israel so we could be your or you pulled us out of Egypt so we could be your bitches. Now we's your bitches, and these cocksmokers over here gonna kill us. Then what you gonna do, God? You got no bitches. You specifically pulled us out of Egypt so we could be your bitches in this spot, and they're gonna kill us. You gonna take that shit from them, God? Hear my prayer, and be merciful unto thine inheritance. Turn our sorrow into joy, that we may live, O Lord, and praise thy name, and destroy not the mouths of them that praise thee. O Lord, all Israel in like manner cried most earnestly unto the Lord, because their death was before their eyes. Really, everybody else knows about this shit, God, but you, so I'm giving you the lowdown, all right? And that's the end of that chapter. Queen Esther, and by the way these things are structured, you couldn't insert it back in. In some translations, I guess they use the old lettering and old numbering for the verses and chapters. But this, unless it's the first section of each book, which I can't imagine, or each chapter, I can't imagine it would be, there's just no way to put this back in there. So, nice job there, guys. Queen Esther, also being in fear of death, resorted unto the Lord, and laid away her glorious apparel, and put on the garments of anguish and mourning, and instead of precious ointments, she covered her hair She covered her head with ashes and dung, and she humbled her body greatly, and all the places of her joy she filled with her torn hair. So she rips her hair off and shoves it in her coochie. That's fucked up. I can't... Boy. I can't imagine that would be very healthy. I mean, depending on the order of which she did that, if she covered her hair in ashes and dung, then yanked a bunch of it out and shoved it up her coochie, she's probably going to get an infection. Pretty nasty one at a time when there were no antibiotics. And she prayed unto the Lord God of Israel, saying, O my Lord, thou only art our king. Help me, desolate woman, which have no helper but thee. For my danger is in mine hand. From my youth up I have heard in the tribe of my family that thou, O Lord, tookest Israel from among all the people and our fathers from all their predecessors for a perpetual inheritance, and thou hast performed whatsoever thou didst promise them. And now we have sinned before thee. Therefore hast thou given us into the hands of our enemies. No definition as to what that sin was. Oh, because we worship their gods, O Lord, thou art righteous. Huh? So, were they worshiping the Persian gods before they were turned over to the Persians by God, or did that happen afterwards? I don't know. Nevertheless, it satisfieth them not that we are in bitter captivity, but they have stricken hands with their idols, that they will abolish the thing that thou with thy mouth hast ordained, and destroy thine inheritance, and stop the mouth of them that praise thee, and quench the glory of thy house, and of thine altar, and open the mouths of the heathens, to set forth the praises of the idols, and to magnify a fleshly king forever. Dun, dun, dun! O Lord, give not thy scepter unto them that be nothing, and let them not laugh at our fall, but turn their device upon themselves, and make him an example that hath begun this against us. Remember, O Lord, make thyself known in time of our affliction, and give me boldness, O King of the nations, and Lord of all power. Give me eloquent speech in my mouth before the lion. Turn his heart to hate him that fighteth against us, that there may be an end of him, and of all that are like-minded to him. But deliver us with thine hand, and help me that am desolate, which have no other help but thee. Thou knowest all things, O Lord. Thou knowest that I hate the glory of the unrighteous, but I married him anyways, and abhor the bed of the uncircumcised, but I sleep with him anyways, and of all the heathen. Thou knowest my necessity, for I abhor the sign of my high estate, which is upon mine head in the days wherein I show myself, and that I abhor it as a minstrous rag. That's a nice image. And that I wear it not when I am private by myself. And that thine handmaid hath not eaten at Ammon's table, and that I have not greatly esteemed the king's feast, nor drunk the wine of the drink offerings. Neither had thine handmaid had any joy since the day that I was brought hither to this present, but in thee, O Lord God of Abraham. O thou mighty God above all, hear the voice of the forlorn, and deliver us out of the hands of the mischievous, and deliver me out of my fear. And that's the end of the chapter. And upon the third day, when she had ended her prayers, she laid away her mourning garments and put on her glorious apparel. Did she clean her coochie out? And being gloriously adorned, after she had called upon God, who is the beholder and Savior of all things, she took 2 maids with her. And upon the one she leaned as carrying herself daintily, and the other followed, bearing up her train. And she was ruddy through the perfection of her beauty, and her countenance was cheerful and very amiable, but her heart was in anguish for fear. Then, having passed through all the doors, she stood before the king, who sat upon his royal throne, and was clothed with all his robes of majesty, and glittering with gold and precious stones, and he was very dreadful. Then lifting up his countenance that shone with majesty, He looked very fiercely upon her, and the queen fell down, and was pale, and fainted, and bowed herself upon the head of the maid that went before her. Then God changed the spirit of the king into mildness, who in a fear leapt from his throne, and took her in his arm, till she came to herself again, and comforted her with loving words, and said unto her, Esther, what's the matter? I am thy brother. Be of good cheer. Thou shalt not die, though our commandment be general, come near. And so he held up his golden scepter, and laid it upon her neck, and embraced her, and said, Speak unto me. Then she said unto him, I saw thee, my lord, as an angel of God, and my heart was troubled for fear of thy majesty. For wonderful art thou, Lord, and thy countenance is full of grace. And as she was speaking, she fell down for faintness. Then the king was troubled, and all his servants comforted her. It's an infection. She's got hair in her cooch, man. That's the end of that chapter, and here's the final chapter. The great King Xerxes, under the princes and governors of 107 and 20 provinces, from India unto Ethiopia, and unto all our faithful subjects, greeting. Many the more often they are honored with the great bounty of their gracious princes, the more proud they are waxen, and endeavor to hurt not our subjects only, but not be able to bear abundance, do take in hand to practice also against those that do them good, and take not only thankfulness away from among men, but also lifted up with the glorious words of lewd persons that were never good. They think to escape the justice of God that seeth all things and hateth evil. Oftentimes also fair speech of those that are put in trust to manage their friends' affairs hath caused many that are in authority to be partakers of innocent blood, and hath enwrapped them remediless calamities, beginning with the falsehood and deceit of their lewd disposition, the innocency and goodness of princes. Now ye may see this, as we have declared, not so much by ancient histories as ye may, if ye search what hath been wickedly done of late through the pestilent behavior of them that are unworthily placed in authority. And we must take care for the time to come, that our kingdom may be quiet and peaceable for all men, both by changing our purposes and always judging things that are evident with more equal proceeding. For Ammon, a Macedonian, the son of Amadatha, being indeed a stranger from the Persian blood, and far distant from our goodness, and as a stranger received of us, had so far forth obtained the favor that we show toward every nation, as that he was called our father, and was continually honored of all the next person under the king. But he, not bearing his great dignity, went about to deprive us of our kingdom and life, having by manifold and cunning deceits sought of us the destruction, as well of Mardukis, who saved our life and continually procured our good, as also of blameless Esther, partaker of our kingdom, with their whole nation. For by these means he thought, finding us destitute of friends, to have translated the kingdom of the Persians to the Macedonians. Ooh. But we find that the Jews, whom this wicked wretch hath delivered to utter destruction, are no evildoers, but live by most just laws, and that they be children of the most high and most mighty living God, who hath ordered the kingdom both unto us and to our progenitors in the most excellent manner. Wherefore ye shall do well not to put in execution the letters sent unto you by Ammon, the son of Amadatha. For he that was the worker of these things is hanged at the gates of Susa with all his family. God, who ruleth all things, speedily rendering vengeance to him according to his deserts. I would guess that's supposed to be deserts. Therefore ye shall publish the copy of this letter in all places, that the Jews may freely live after their own laws, And ye shall aid them, that even the same day, being the 13th day of the 12th month Adar, they may be avenged on them, who in the time of their affliction shall set upon them. For Almighty God hath turned to joy unto them the day wherein the chosen people should have perished. Yet shall therefore among your solemn feasts keep it an high day with all feasting, that both now and hereafter there may be safety to us and the well-affected Persians, but to those which do conspire against us a memorial of destruction. Therefore every city and country whatsoever which shall not do according to these things shall be destroyed without mercy with fire and sword, and shall be made not only unpassable for men, but also most hateful to wild beasts and fowls forever. And unfortunately, we're kind of at the awkward ending limit time here, because I looked at the next book in the Apocrypha, and I think that's so long I won't be able to read it in the remaining 20 minutes or so. Ouch, fuzznuts. Oh, gosh, cat. Why do you do this to me? And something I just happened to think about while I was listening to this. The characters in this book would have lived at the time frame, depending on who you believe, covered in Tobit and the books of Esdras. Yet, there's no mention or allusion to any of these events or people in those other books. That's kind of odd. I mean, since apparently Purim is a big deal. So you would expect that books which were written by people who were actually knew Xerxes or whomever would have mentioned that. And in digging in the Wikipedia article on Purim, we get this. Some scholars argue that Purim does not actually have a historical basis. Amon Netzer and Shaul Sheikh argue that the names Mordecai and Esther are similar to those of the Babylon gods Marduk and Ishtar. Scholars W.S. McCullough, Muhammad Dandamayev, and Shaul Sheikh say that the Book of Esther, despite its accurate details of the Achaemenid court, is historical fiction. Emily Kurt says that the Book of Esther was composed in the Hellenistic period, and it shows a perspective of Persian court identical to classical Greek books. Shaul Sheikh says the date of the composition of the book is unknown, but most likely not much after the fall of the Achaemenid kingdom during the Parthian period, perhaps the 3rd or 2nd century BCE. That still doesn't sound right to me. McCullough also suggests that Herodotus recorded the name of Xerxes' queen as Amistris, the daughter of Otanes, and not as Esther. Scholars Albert I. Baumgarten and S. David Sperling and R.J. Littman say that, according to Herodotus, Xerxes could only marry a daughter of one of the 6 allies of his father, Darius I. Now, those of you who will remember back to Tobit and Esdras will know that it was, they mentioned Nebuchadnezzar, Darius I, Cyrus the Great, Xerxes, and Darius II, or Cyrus II, I forget, maybe all of them. But that there just seems to negate everything about Tobit, Esdras, and this book. If any one of those books are accurate, then the others have to be, then Esther has to be false, and if Esther's true, then the others have to be false. Or they could all be bullshit. Which one am I going for? I think I'm going for the Esther being false. And in reading the Wikipedia entry on Purim some more, it really confuses me how they come up with the idea of Purim dating from from like the 3rd or 4th century BCE, because there is the first non-contemporary, or the first source that they mention which references Purim is Josephus. You know, this is the first non-biblical source that mentions Purim. And he lived in the 1st century CE. Okay. So why didn't anybody mention it before this? I mean, they have a mention of some guy who lived in the 3rd century BCE of Berosus, providing context for the account in that he records the introduction of idols of Anahita under Xerxes II throughout the Persian Empire. But that's not a reference to the events that led to Purim. It's not a mention of Purim. That's just, this guy, the king introduced a bunch of idols, and that's mentioned in the Book of Esther. But how is it not? How does that relate? How does that prove that, this was written then? It doesn't make any sense to me at all. I mean, you would think that they would be able to cite a source which made reference to a great feast the Jews had that was written some time around the period in which the events of the Book of Esther are supposed to have happened. That is a non-Jewish source, like the Persians mentioning it, or, I don't know, somebody else, in that area, or an account of, the Greeks or the Romans or somebody talking about it. But there's, if that exists, it's not in the Wikipedia entry, which kind of leads me to believe that this whole thing is a bit of a suppositional thing. That, people have believed this for a really long time, so it must be true. When the reality is, we don't know when they started doing it, who started it, or why. I don't know. I'm just too ignorant on this. Have to do some digging. Maybe ask Dustin back on and see if he knows anything about this. So I'm going to wrap the episode up here. I know it's a little shorter than usual. I apologize, but there's just no way to squeeze 2 books into this one episode. I had, as I said at the beginning, front-loaded it in hopes that would pad it out enough, but hey, at least it's longer than 15 minutes, so you don't have to go too long on your commute in silence.
That's it for this episode of The Atheist in the Trailer Park Podcast. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, as well as just about anywhere else podcasts can be found. Many of the episodes are also on YouTube. Follow the show on Twitter. @TParkAtheist is the show's Twitter handle. It's on Facebook at facebook.com/trailerparkatheist.com. If you happen to like the podcast, please rate it on iTunes. If you'd like to support the podcast, there's a donate button on the show notes page. You can support it via Patreon at patreon.com/TNTucker. Thanks for listening.
Say goodnight, Fosnuts.
All I know is this violates every canon of respectable broadcasting.
Damned cat.